Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? I'm already messing up. I don't know if I've ever messed up that part of the intro, but geez, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You?
Doing good. I feel like it's been a pretty stressful time with work and stuff, and I'm happy to be back in my home studio, not in a hotel, and then I resettled and I can't get the intro right. So I don't know, maybe I should go back. But I'm feeling
Head back
pretty
to
good.
Coachella during those stressful times in Coachella.
Yeah, I'll go back. Why not? No, I'm feeling pretty good. And right off the bat, before we get started, because I was just feeling as I was driving home, getting ready to do this episode, I'm like, the game yesterday got me feeling pretty good. Carver, how are you feeling overall as a Dortmund fan? Because maybe I feel like as we talk, maybe there's things that are going to bring me down a little bit, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic right now. Like maybe that'll change in the next 45 to an hour while we talk. But how are you feeling overall as a Dortmund fan? Because we are now officially in the new era, the new Kovač era.
Well, we still sit 11th in the Bundesliga, and the top four is now 7 points away. Excuse me. No, it is 6 points. Or is it 7th? Leipzig is in 4th. They leapfrog Stuttgart, so we're 7 points off. Not great, but you are seeing some improvements from the team recently, specifically with under Kovač. You're seeing quicker transitions from defense to attack. You're seeing more purposeful spells of possession and a better general understanding of what Kovač is wanting out of his players. So, that's been a positive. And, there's been some building on from what Tolberg has brought whenever he had a short stint. But yeah, we need to start getting results in the Bundesliga before I get more happy, because 11th is just unthinkable, really, at the moment.
Man, you brought me down way quicker than I was anticipating.
It didn't take 45 minutes. Took 2.
Because you're right. Because I wasn't looking at the Bundesliga table, and because the Sporting game is so fresh on my mind, and even with that, like there's some things on that where like I'm trying not to take too much away from that Sporting game, and we'll get into that as we talk about that match. But I think it's just this freshness, this fresh start in as we get into Stuttgart. Like we knew this was going to be a tough game regardless. It was going to be a tough one to get a result. It would have been a fantastic one to get a result. It is at home, so you have a little more hope going into it, right? But Stuttgart's a very good team, but yet a team we need to be beating, definitely competing against if we want to get back to where we should be in the table in the Bundesliga. But yeah, as you said, pretty far off, and not only beating Stuttgart just for the positivity of it, but the points, as you said, like we need to get results. And I'm hoping there's been so many games where I'm like, hoping this can be the start, the catalyst, the thing that can push us forward. And maybe this Sporting match and then the match coming up this weekend can really help turn the tide. But we're so kind of black and white Champions League versus Bundesliga. So we could just keep carrying on in the rest of the Bundesliga. And maybe the Champions League, do we go to the final again? Can Kovač just do it in these knockout rounds? I don't know. And even if we get there and we're like 11th, 12th in the Bundesliga, still probably can't be too happy about that. But with all that said, let's get into Stuttgart. Of course, losing 1-2, and starting with the Anton own goal. Like we're gonna get in the lineup and everything, but just overview of the game, like not great. And you don't want the guy. I mean, Stuttgart loves to see it, right? But not what we want to see.
Yeah, it's painfully ironic that both former Stuttgart players contributed to both of Stuttgart's goals. Girassi was a little bit more indirect, but Anton being a lot more direct with the own goal. Yeah, this game was a must-win. Every game in the Bundesliga is a must-win at this point. We are in the middle of February now, getting towards the last quarter of the season, and we are still losing way too many points, even at home as well as away. Stuttgart are a well-drilled team. Hoeneß has done wonders for that club and built a really solid foundation for what he wants, and of course achieving heights such as European football. But either way, we are still yet to get a win against Stuttgart since 2022. 3 years now, 5 meetings in a row where we've either lost to them or just gotten a draw. I think it's one draw, and then 5 losses in our last handful of meetings against them now. So it's a real gut punch, because we could have been level with them on points, and now there's a 6-point gap between us and Stuttgart and a 7-point gap between us and Leipzig in the top 4. So, I mean, it wasn't a terrible game. We lost at home, of course, but there was a really big chunk in the middle of this game where Dortmund actually looked competitive, and compared to the last handful of games we played against Stuttgart, where we crawl into our shell, we play really defensive, we're on our heels. But, this time we actually played like a home side, generated some chances. We played on the front foot, but at the end of the day, we couldn't convert those chances. And we kind of we allowed Stuttgart to leave the Westfalen with 3 points through the more self-inflicted, preventable mistakes. And of course, poor officiating too. And we'll talk about that. But yeah, just a real gut punch here.
And we'll jump into the lineup, which, as it's kind of predictable, kind of know what you're going to get. But we did have a few more options, of course, with our, well, I guess we had one extra option with our winter signings. But Kobel in goal, Rierson right back, Chan and Anton are 2 center backs, Benzabaini left back, Sabitzer and Gross in the mid, with Adeyemi, Brandt, and Gittens, and then Girassi up top. And maybe this isn't a match specifically to call it out. And I know where we're at this point, but Chan, do we see he's been better this year as a center back than what we would have expected from him in the midfield. So are we fully accepting, has he fully accepted that his role in this team is you're a center back? And do we need to start looking at that as we do have 4 center backs because it is Chan? Every time I see him there, I'm not surprised. That's what I've accepted. I'm just curious, how he sees his role and how the overall fan base just just accept that he's a center back. He's not the best in the world, but he can definitely put in better performances there than what we would see in the midfield.
He's been on, a better as a defender rather than a midfield for some time now too. I mean, several years, in fact. You could argue his performance has just been consistently better in the back line as opposed to that number 6. And then when you look at the other players that have been either available or not available, Sula with injuries, Anton cannot really find a good footing here at a consistent level in this club so far, and continues to disappoint, in my opinion. It's still promising, of course, for Anton, but there needs to be a consistent performer that can be a pairing for Schlotterbeck. Because Schlotterbeck is a lock. He's been a lock, but we need someone on that right-hand side to bring a bit more of that stability. And, surprisingly, Chan sometimes does bring that. He's going to be prone to mistakes, of course, but, you're looking at these last few games, and he's been quietly actually pretty solid and saved our ass a few times too. I mean, even from this game the Stuttgart game, I know Anton had a big mistake here, or am I mixing up 2 games? I know Chan tracked back recently. It might have been the game
Chan
before
had
that.
A pretty big mistake in the Sporting game too. I
forget which game it was when Chan was the one that tracked all the way back and actually saved us from a goal there. I'm mixing up my games. But either way, he's had a few moments like that where actually, he looks like someone who could be a starter at the moment for that other center back pairing until one of the other center backs pick up some form and fitness.
Yeah, he feels very much you'll often hear, whether it's pundits or, I don't know, anyone describe some soccer players as just you just know what you're going to get. He's just a solid 7. I think that's maybe a stretch for Chan because you think overall you might know what you're going to get in that center back position, but there's the wild card in there where you can lead to have a really bad mistake that either leads to a red card or a goal directly. So maybe a solid 6, you know what you're going to get from him week to week, which isn't great, but it's better than, I don't know, 1 is better than playing someone who's not a center back.
Yeah, well, the spine of the team, too, needs some help, not just in the back line, too, but the midfield. This game against Stuttgart, the midfield continued to be pretty mediocre. Brandt is physically and mentally completely out of form. I know he's contributed to goals these last 2 games. I do not care. I think he shouldn't have been seeing more than 55 or 60 minutes, despite him, again, contributing to goals with just so many weak passes. Again, he just looks completely out of it. Adeyemi is in the part of the cycle that I've described before, where he's post-injury and he's in pretty shit form. Again, despite him actually contributing a goal here, I think it's just safe to say when he's at his best, he doesn't think too much. He's just instinctively doing things. He just puts his head down and puts in the work. But when he tries to overthink things and overcomplicate things, he's stuck in a position where he always decides to pass when he needs to shoot, or vice versa. Whenever he needs to shoot, he'll pass. So, and even whenever he's on his weak foot too, right? So whenever he's on his right foot, he's somehow shooting, but whenever he's actually on his strong foot, his left, he's passing again. So his decision-making has always been a pretty big downfall of his game. But we're just in this part of the cycle again, where it's just frustrating because you can't find any of the form he had back in October now, several months ago.
On Adeyemi, I think there's a couple different, potential factors. I don't know for sure, but I wonder, it could be coming back from injury, right? And trying to get back into that. But part of me thinks that it's him switching sides, right? We've primarily seen him more on the left. And while you
Yeah.
want to say like maybe it's not, and even they've always done a lot of rotation, so you would see him and Mullen switching sides anyways.
Right.
But I feel like you got him being most productive was on that left side and not necessarily that the inverted role, which you see from a lot of wingers who will cut in and take shots on their left foot from the right. And I know he's tried that a couple times. I don't know if we've seen it to success, but maybe that's where some of the indecision is coming in, where he's just not quite as comfortable yet on the right side, because with Mullen out, Gittens in the form he's been in, which I know he's been a little off lately, or hasn't been able to produce as much as what we saw earlier in the year. Like Adeyemi is now getting that start on the right, and I don't know if that's any contributing factor. Just like switching it up is throwing him off a little bit. Hasn't quite figured out that role exactly yet.
Yeah, and Adeyemi has also been committing a lot of fouls too. I'm losing the numbers now. I thought I had that in my notes here. Apologies, but Adeyemi does commit a lot of fouls. He draws a lot of fouls, which is great, but he also commits virtually the same numbers and fouls as well whenever he's committing them. So, this team just gets itself into trouble way too often. It's self-inflicted goals. We're first in the league in red and yellow cards as well. In this game against Stuttgart, of course, Ryerson, questionable to say the least for his sending off. I think that can contribute that to more poor officiating, but nonetheless, you need to be focused. You need to be sharp. You need to be cool when you play Stuttgart to try to get a win, which again, very, very desperate here for points in the tail end of the season. And unfortunately, the sending off mixed with other few things too, that it just wasn't enough to get 3 points at the end of the day, or even a point.
When towards the end of the match, I had some coworkers around, and we were watching the game, and we're already down. At this point, we're down 2-0. We hadn't scored yet when we were watching, and when Ryerson gets the red, I was just like, just punch him in the face. Just like, come on, just deserve it. Like, if you're gonna get a red, might as well just get a red, fully deserved. Because at that point, I'm like, God, I don't remember if he got that before or after we had got one back. But I knew, like, even when we got the goal, I didn't expect much else from the game. Like, because I even knew if we were to tie it up, I'm still going to be upset. I'm still upset that we're in this position, that we're clawing back at home and now hoping for a point. Like, whether we drop all 3 points or get a point out of it at that point, like, me just as a fan was like fed up with it already. I'm like, I have no hope that, one, they're even going to tie it up. And if they do, I'm still mad. I'm still mad at the overall performance and that we haven't been able to, I guess, where we're at now. Like, I know this is Kovac's first game, but I was just upset overall. But is there, if you had anything else to hit on that, but I was just going to ask you too, like, overall, what were looking at positives, what were any positives that came out of this match?
Well, just going back to the first point, I mean, Stuttgart, they had a really mature performance, especially you saw them grow into this game. Like, again, they're usually the one that's putting us on our heels. They're the one that's pressing forward. And when they're against the ball, they're making us cough up the ball really easily. Wasn't the case this game. Very competitive until those last 20 or so minutes. Towards the tail end, Stuttgart really, grew in confidence and were able to remain compact despite conceding the goal in the 81st minute there. So yeah, I had kind of a similar feeling as well. We did lose a little bit of that bite towards the end there, and just more mistakes as the game went on, and individual mistakes, sure, but also just like a lack of understanding between some of the players. They're still, they're going to be working out the tweaks of this new system for a while. Some of the positives I mentioned already, again, quicker transitions, a bit more purpose in the ball, less touches too. I think you saw a lot of those. You saw some glimpses in the Stuttgart game, and I think you saw a lot of that come into fruition more in that second half in the Sporting game, and collectively, but also individually as well. You saw a lot of those positives kind of take more of a light there in the Champions League game, yeah.
Is there anything else from this game you want to move on to Champions League? Because I'm kind of keen to talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the goals we conceded were dumb. Again, own goal and poor marking, bad giveaway from Guirassy, and lack of awareness for us to mark anyone in the box there. I think they had 4 or 5 open players behind our whole back line. So, again, very preventable, and I hope we can learn from this, because despite somewhat decent performance, it's still not enough for us to get the points that we need to get even a sniff of top 4.
And just one more thing, as I was talking about, like, towards the end of the game, no hopes of getting a goal or getting anything out of that match. While I was watching with my coworkers, we get and I don't like. I want to be. Sounds like Carver's already off Brant boys. He's left. I mean, there's a chance. Maybe there's some redemption. And as we're getting into the last play of the game, we have the free kick.
Yeah,
the last kick, and again, because I'm with my coworkers, they're like, oh my gosh, it can happen. I was like, it's not happening. There's no way. And then Brandt to just freaking sky it.
Skies
Just
it.
send
Yeah.
it into the yellow wall. Like, it's horrible
He
way to
shouldn't
end
be
it.
starting. He shouldn't be starting for this team. And if you're going to do that solo at the end of the game, if you are actually even going to shoot, you have to put that on target. I know it's easier said than done. I understand that. I've taken a few free kicks in my life. But even if you are not feeling that confident, I'm not even going to get near this goal, you just try to put it in a dangerous area. But the fact that he's like, nah, top bins, and puts full power behind it, which is the complete opposite of how his game has been looking lately, right? That's so passive, and like his touches and passes are so weak. But this shot is completely overdone, and yeah, not even close to goal, not even a sniff of putting it into a dangerous area for us to salvage any points there. Really disappointing. And Brandt continues to really fall deeper in this season and should not be starting at the 10 at the moment.
And I mean, you said it, but like the decision on that goal is almost that shot is what's so upsetting, because what are the chances you're going to hit a banger from there? Like,
and he's hit a few free kicks before, but when you're just in that
moment where it's like it's last ditch effort, you just got to put it in the box and hope Girassi gets his head on it, right? Like the odds are way higher for that to happen than I think you hitting a banger from that free kick. Like,
at least when you're in that rut, mentally and physically, I cannot stress that enough. Brandt is just completely out of it at the moment.
All right, well, let's get into Sporting, where Brandt was a little bit better, although I still have some grievances in this match with him.
Totally.
Despite a high FOTMOB score and 2 assists, there was a lot of stuff where I was really frustrated. But away on the road in this knockout round of the Champions League at Sporting, who has been a pretty good team. I know it's a little different. Like, Ruben Almiron is out now at Man United, but he did lead them in that, I think, 4-1 win in the Champions League against Man City earlier in the season. And I don't know personnel-wise if they've changed a lot other than Almiron going. I don't know if they've lost a lot of players. But I will say off the bat, like, their starting 11 had 6 players that were 21 or younger. So I know that they did. It seemed, to me at least, like I don't watch them week after week, so I don't really know. But they played a lot of kids, quite a lot of rotation for them. But still, it's on the road, and I'm pretty happy with the result, getting the 3-0 win. But our starting 11, didn't mention him in the last game. He got his first minutes. Daniel Svensson, left back, gets the start, goes 90. Really liked his performance. We can talk about him a little later. Schlotterbeck and Chan are 2 center backs. Rierson on the right, Kobel in goal, Gross and Sabitzer. Is this the exact same lineup except Schlotterbeck and Svensson? So then Gittens, Brandt, and Adeyemi and Girassi up top.
Yeah. I touched on the second half already. I'll talk a bit on the first one. Pretty unimaginative, not able to generate many chances, which is, the difference between that game and Stuttgart in that first half. Just really unable to even drive the ball forward and create chances. And I had a few tweets here, and I know some people were giving me some different perspectives, and I know everyone's going to have different opinions on some of this stuff. But I wanted to touch on like Couto, who did not play these 2 games, hasn't played a lot this season. But some people were mentioning, like, he's one of the very few players on the team that can actually push the ball forward, and you look at his numbers for progressive carries. So he's second in the team for progressive carries. JG Gittens is first with 6. Couto's behind him with 5. Adeyemi is just behind him with under 5. And then it drops a bit for Rierson below that with 2.4 progressive carries per game. So a lot of the people who are actually able to do that are exclusively all out wide. And most of them are wingers as well. So we're not, looking at anyone who's actually number 6 and number 8. Gross, we had glimpses of that at the beginning of the season, but he's really teetered out for a handful of reasons we talked about already. But we need a driving force for that number 6 to actually bring the ball forward. And even whenever you look at Mecha, whenever he's fit, he doesn't do that too much either. I mean, his precision and his passing has been a bit better. He's looked a bit more sharp this season, but he's still not that player that actually drives the ball forward. So, yeah, I mean, just going back to Couto, if that's like the argument, I think we need more players that are going to do that centrally rather than just out wide, because I'm not seeing too much from Couto whenever he does come on. I don't think I prefer Rierson over him in the back line. Couto does have plenty of potential, yes, but for a 30 million signing, you would expect him to be a lock for that right back position. And for me, he's not. And even at the right wing, you have other players who can drive the ball forward. Of course, a lot of them play primarily on the left here. But when it just comes to this team, struggling to actually get the ball forward, I wish we had more players in the center of the park that can help us out in that department.
Yeah. On off of that, I'll just throw Svensson in as a mention. Like I know
Yeah.
he hasn't played in a while from the quotes from Kovač after the game. Like it's been a minute since he's played with just the Danish league, and I think they maybe had a longer winter break, so it's been a while. And so this is his first start, I think, first Champions League debut, and then going 90 minutes because he only played like 5 minutes in the last match. He definitely looked a little shaky at times. Maybe it was just a look on his face, but every time the camera was on him, he looked kind of scared. That could just be how his face looks when he's playing. But I think he really kind of worked himself into the game really well. I saw some good moments here and there.
For sure.
And then, as you mentioned, the progressions, it'd be interesting to see his stats on that specifically from his last club. But we did see him. We mentioned that he can play through the midfield. He can play as a 6, can play as an 8. And we saw that. We saw him kind of what Matson did a lot last season, of him coming into the central of the field. And I wonder if that's what we'll see a little more, if he can step into that role to carry the ball. I know Benzabaini had a little knock, which is why Svensson probably got the start. But if that's something he possesses, if that's a skill he has, and while we're in this position where we're starting Gross and Sabitzer, if he's the guy to do that, maybe that's an answer. So it'll just be interesting to see how we utilize him more throughout. But I don't know if you had any extra thoughts to add on him.
Yeah, no, I think Svensson had a very solid game, and Kovač was praising him a lot in some of the post-game comments here. They put him on set pieces early on, which was pretty surprising. Rierson, I know, was taking a lot of them under Tolberg, and he seemed to be very effective at that. Kovač has different ideas, so to put Svensson on there and for him to have the confidence to, actually volunteer as that for being a player that hasn't even started this club yet is pretty respectable. He looked really focused, had lots of movement too, up and down the flanks. He did drive the ball forward a few times, actually going centrally as well, like you mentioned. These minutes are really going to help him start to build like a foundation of a relationship with the others around him. You didn't see him get on the ball too much those first 45 minutes, and I think that was kind of why. It's a general lack of understanding, just because he hasn't had literally almost any time playing with these other players around him, but also with the instability with the players around him. There's just not much of a structure, at least on a consistent basis at the moment. So, he's still finding his footing, but a very impressive performance. I mean, he also had a few duels against Fresneda. For people who might have forgotten or that are not familiar, he was a right back that Dortmund were heavily linked to just last summer, so you get to see a duel between the two fullbacks there. Yeah, I was pretty impressed, and I'm really excited to see more of him going forward. He looks like he's going to be a very promising permanent transfer, hopefully, if he continues to build on that and build some form here. But yeah, glad we got to see him. And I know, of course, Benzabaini had the injury, but it's cool for us to actually get to see him on early on here into the loan spell.
Yeah, coming off or him just being able to step in and like start this match again, it's on the road, so it's going to be a little more difficult. And to put in like such a solid performance, I hope we can see that week in, week out. And I'm just glad that now there is competition. I've been saying it all year, like we just need competition. Yeah, Benzabaini's been good, but you can make your players better by giving them someone to compete with. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was very kind of like satisfying going into this match was you hear Benzabaini has a knock, and there's no question mark who's going to be on the left. It's not, is Rierson going to go on the left and Couteau is going to start, who I haven't seen much of. It's like, no, another left back is going to be starting on the left. Sweet. It's not going to be Rierson and then Gross playing right back. It's not a ton of shuffling around. It's just a like-for-like change, maybe stylistically a little different, but positionally like-for-like change. And yeah, I hope if he can just this is such a good base start for him, and if he can just keep progressing from here, it's really exciting to see, especially if we can make this transfer permanent.
Yeah. There's a few other things I wanted to talk about towards the second half of this game. Guirassy is one of them for sure. The contrast between the Champions League and the Bundesliga for Dortmund as a whole continues to be true every week, and then the same kind of happens for Guirassy too, right? He looks pretty uninterested at times in the Bundesliga. His antics, his attitude, his flopping are all pretty rampant, but then in the Champions League, somehow he continues to turn it on. He's the top goal scorer in the Champions League still after this game. He broke a record actually for Dortmund Champions League goal scorers. I think it was like the most in a season, or at least at this point in the season. One of those two stats. He was everywhere in this game. I mean, he is also helping a lot in build-up. I know that's probably because of the players around him, like JG, Adeyemi. They're going to push forward themselves. They're going to try to go ISO. They're going to try to shoot. So and of course, also with a completely absent and mediocre midfield, Guirassy is going to thrive a bit more dropping deeper, helping out in that sense, being a little bit more a physical presence, and contribute outside of goal contributions. So hats off to Gersi for another great Champions League game, and I hope he can carry that into the Bundesliga for once. That'd be awesome. Not once. He's got 9 goals, but still, that'd be great to see it on a bit more consistent basis and turn the attitude around for much more beatable teams.
It's funny that you mentioned I mean, it's not funny because it's happened all season. We've talked about it so much, but the flopping and the complaining and all that, where he literally got a yellow card for complaining about getting a penalty when his own player crashed into him, like, is the most ridiculous thing ever. But in this, there was a moment where he goes down in the box and I thought it was a penalty. I was like, oh my gosh, that is a foul. First seeing it. And then he just doesn't complain at all. He's like, all right, cool. I was like, what is happening right now? I fully expected him to get up or like slap the ground and start complaining. And he was just like, yep. And I was like, oh my God, I thought that one actually was a penalty. And you're just chill about it. So I don't know if he got it talking to, maybe, but yeah, he played it cool, kept playing, and then got on with his business. And that header was, I mean, that's what you want to see from your big striker. Just put it on his head. Yeah. And the finish was real nice.
Yeah, and a real sense of maturity from us this game. Again, pretty different from the Stuttgart game here. And we really grew into that game in the second half. Kovač, I don't know what he said at halftime, but we did see the improvements there from things I mentioned before. And then on the other side of that, Sporting's manager, in his post-game, he was just saying how they had a great first half and deserved more for that. The quality they put in the game for trying to press and win duels, we were very good, but in the second half, we were very reactive and ended up conceding at a stage when the game was very even. Borussia were better in that sense. And then he kind of went on to talk about how, again, they were a bit more reactive rather than proactive here in that second half. And credit for Dortmund for putting on that sort of mature performance in the second half away and putting us in a pivotal position here to advance come next week back at home.
Yeah, I do feel like they were a little unlucky in not getting at least one goal in the first half. Not all their chances were great. They had a couple, like one rattle off the crossbar.
They had a couple 6 saves out of Kobel as well.
Yeah, like they had quite a few chances. They could have done better in some situations, but the one thing I appreciated is it's just from a Sporting standpoint. It's like they were just trying. They were just putting shots on goal, and they had some really good shots that would have just been bangers of a goal. Luckily, they were either right at Kobel or he was able to make a good save or it was off the crossbar. But I do feel like they probably deserved a little more out of the first half. And that was my worry, was like, man, they're just coming on and we barely had any chances in this first half. And then luckily, we were able to turn it around and really take control and really start to create, which led to our 3 goals. I was going to hit on Gross too, who I thought was pretty standout. Of course, he gets his goal. I did notice even before he got that goal, like he was getting forward and in the box quite a bit. There was a few situations where I was just confused. I was like, oh, who is that? Oh, wow, what is Gross doing all the way up there? Not that it's a bad thing, and of course he gets his goal, but I wonder if that's just a slight tactical tweak, and maybe it's because we've been seeing him out of position or playing right back a lot more lately, and I just haven't noticed it from before. But I liked it because obviously he got a goal out of it, and maybe if that's like a different player in there, not to belittle Gross at all, but you just don't expect him to be the one up there and in the box. But if it's someone like a Chukwuemeka or I don't know, anyone else playing kind of that 6 role, like we can get a little more efficiency out of that. Or if Sabitzer can start to step up a little more, because he can be really deadly in the box as we saw last year. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and of course he gets a goal out of it too with the assist from Gross.
Yeah, Gersi again was everywhere, and he was the one that whipped in that cross from out wide too. So different players making different movements and different positions here. And it proved to be effective.
Did you have anything on Brandt while we're hitting some players?
It's nothing that I haven't said already, honestly. It's the exact same feeling I had against Stuttgart.
There were so many just passes that were off. There were so many just these poor moments. There were a few times where I was like, oh man, Brandt's really tracking back, or like Brandt's making that run back and getting back, or like making a lot of recoveries and tackles. And then it was just Svensson. I was just getting confused with, haven't been able to, I can't distinguish them apart yet. With Svensson's hair is pretty similar, but there was quite a few times like, oh man, Brandt is flying. I was like, oh no, it's Svensson. So more credit to Svensson, I guess. But I mean, he does, what did he have? 2 assists in this.
And
so
both
I mean,
were great crosses. I mean, the one to Gersi was quite a distance, and the precision is no easy task. And then even the one for Adeyemi was well weighted. I just need to see more of that. Outside of this game, it's just way too many weak touches, way too many weak passes. a lot of forced passes, and just like a general lack of bite in his game compared to last year.
I did notice he was kind of pushing out on the right quite a bit, and I wonder if that was Svensson coming in centrally, if that's you're able to spread the field a little more. That's where, I mean, the first 2 goals both came from these wide crosses, so I think that's a space where we're able to take advantage of a little more in the second half.
For sure.
And that was definitely, I think, Svensson being a little more comfortable pushing the central, and then you get Brandt going out wide, Sabitzer pushing up. It's kind of what you see there. But yeah, and then he gets the second assist too. I want to talk a little bit about this. The last goal on the counter. Adeyemi, who is it, Schlotterbeck, who kind of clears it out. Adeyemi is off and running, and he was slowing up quite a bit. Like you almost just expect Adeyemi to just go for it, and just like, you got 2 guys, you're faster than both of them, even with the ball, so just go. And he holds it up, plays it off to Brandt, and just like the explosiveness he has to just blow past anyone. Like he had no right getting around that defender. That center back, or I don't know if he's playing center back or right back, was not ready for that speed at all. He's just like running, thinking, I'm ahead of this guy. There's no way. And then next thing you know, he's like 2 feet around you with the ball and is able to bury it. And I mean, the ball from Brandt too, the ball on that was a good one to get around him.
Yeah. It's been a while since we saw the gainer celebration from Adeyemi. You know, I love
it. It was a little short on it, a little rusty. And I was like, I don't know if you should be doing that coming off an injury, man. But
it's because he hasn't scored in so goddamn long. Well, it'll look cleaner once he starts to hit his form again.
Yeah. I mean, he was like, you got to run into that. Like, and he was like pretty slow with it, but it's fine. He didn't get injured. Everything's fine. What else? Anything else from this match did you have?
No.
Nope. I mean, 3-0 on the road. It gives me quite a bit of confidence for the home leg. Like I'm hoping we can just put it away. And I think this does a lot to just build on that confidence. And
there's
that's
a lot
Champions
for
League
rotation too, you know, like that's a lot of games in the span of 2 weeks with the weekend games, and then obviously 2 Champions League games as well. And was Svensson getting now I'm blanking, was it a full 90 minutes? I could be wrong.
He might have subbed out like in stoppage time, but it was pretty much 90.
Yeah, and I know it's like an unfortunate coincidence here, but with Ryerson being sent off too, he's going to be fresh next week, and I imagine I don't know if he'll be rested much for the home leg against Champions League. But, you know, Benzabaini too, if he's going to be back here pretty soon, hopefully we can get some more numbers and then really start to build on that consistency.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, Sporting again in the Champions League. Next Wednesday is the home leg. And yeah, while we've been pretty good in the Champions League, we got Bundesliga to really worry about. And that's really where we need to turn things around. And maybe this weekend is a good chance to do that, as we are away at Bochum this Saturday, 9:30 Eastern kickoff time. And Bochum's always an interesting match, especially away. They're always up for it. Like, their atmosphere of their stadium is always good. And I don't always have the best memories watching these games.
You're telling me. I said a few weeks ago that the game against Holstein Kiel would be the best opportunity for us to get 3 points on the road. Bochum, now they're bottom of the table, and we have another opportunity to get 3 points on the road. I don't care that this is a derby. This should hopefully, for the love of God, be a game where we can get 3 points on the road and get a little higher up the table. Because, again, this is completely unacceptable. And despite, again, this being a local here derby between Bochum and Dortmund, I expect a win here from Kovač to actually solidify that new manager boost, given we lost on day one with Kovač, and moving forward from that. So, do you have any score predictions here?
I mean, as the optimist who was here, 35 minutes ago when we started the episode, I want to say that we can come out firing and win 3-1. I don't think we get a clean sheet on the road. More realistically, I think it's going to be a little tighter, but I'm hopeful, and I'm going to say a 3-1 win. I was going to ask you I'll ask you your score predictions first.
3-1's pretty good. I know that's pretty standard for you. I'm actually going to hop on that with you as well, actually. I think it sounds pretty par for the course. I mean, I'll take it for sure, but I don't see us keeping a clean sheet. Hopefully we can get some more goals flowing here going into the weekend,
That's where I'm like, the Sporting game gives me hope, because the second half, like, we were just kind of in flow and able to we bagged 3 goals, right? And we were able to get the clean sheet. So I'm hoping that does give us this boost. And if we get this win and then we beat Sporting at home, I don't know why I keep saying Sporting. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've said that like 3 times. It's bugging me. I don't know why I'm saying it. Sporting from Portugal. They're not German.
Right.
This Sporting match, like, if we can have these three on the bounce, I think that sets us up really good, sets Kovač up really good to keep going. And because the next few, even Bundesliga matches, should be very winnable.
Right. Yeah, we're in a good
home against Union Berlin. We're away at St. Pauli, who I believe like they haven't been too great at home, St. Pauli, and then Augsburg before we have Leipzig. So, and I don't know where, if we move on to the Champions League, I don't know where that next round falls in there. It might fall in between one of those matches. But it's just, we have a nice stretch coming up where we should be able to build and hopefully just keep climbing the table. And like you said, get those points that we need.
Bochum and St. Pauli both have the same record at home, which is 2 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses. They're 16th and 17th in the table for home form. So I don't think it should be the same exact play, right, against St. Pauli and just moving forward, trucking through, bulldozing. But Borussia fucking Dortmund, for God's sake, Jacob.
But hey, we're Borussia Dortmund. It does feel very on brand to go to Bochum and give them a win.
I feel like we're Borussia Dortmund in 11th place, losing to relegation level candidates.
Did that happen? I could be making this up, but I feel like I have a memory of going to Bochum and them getting like their first home win or something like that last season. I don't know if that's fully accurate.
I can't remember the exact stat, but I know we've also lost to them a handful of times. We lost to them at home actually back in 2022. We had
maybe
few
that's
games
what it might have been their first away win that they got last year against us. Is maybe what I'm thinking.
That was in 2022 though.
All right. Don't fact check me because I'm wrong. I already know.
Don't fact check me either.
I don't need any fact checking. No, it was. I'm trying to look back. It's fine. I'll accept it. I don't know anything. Lineup. I did want to ask lineup. Do you see any rotation? Have you heard anything? Like, do you think Benzabaini's coming back? Well, I guess what have you heard and seen? Because I also foresee just really similar lineup. But wouldn't it surprise me if we bring Maxi Bayer in and give some rotation to one of our wingers?
Yeah, this is bad for me, but I have not done my homework here of seeing who has been reported to be back here this weekend, but I still don't want to see Brandt start. Reina more than deserves more minutes here, so I want to see him at the 10. I wouldn't mind seeing Svensson get some more minutes if Benzabaini's even fit here. Maybe just give Svensson another go. Like to see Sula get some minutes too. He did come on late here in the Champions League. Maybe he's ready here for a start, given... Wait, Schlotterbeck is back actually after suspension. That was 2 games,
I think he should be
right?
back.
Yeah.
Chukwuemeka could see him.
Yeah, I was going to say Chukwuemeka too. Yeah, Gross is pretty exhausted looking, and he's also been pretty lackluster again, despite the goal contributions here this week. So I'd maybe like to see him add to that midfield more and it just switch things up. We got to get that midfield clicking again. We need a driving force going down to the center of the park and someone who could actually drive the ball forward centrally. And Svensson's seen a few other players do that in moments, but we need someone who can do that on a consistent basis.
Away at Bochum this weekend, kickoff 9:30 Eastern time. If you want to chat with us throughout the week and on match day and everything, and some fellow Dortmund fans, make sure you join our Discord if you haven't already. You can find the link in the description of this episode, or just go to thebvbpodcast.com where you can find latest episodes, all of our socials, the Discord, and everything. So we will see you over there. We appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll see you guys later. Bye.